The Federación Internacional de el Automóvil did not need to call Verstappen's Barcelona data alarming. The race made it obvious. Only 43 points after 7 races. 3 retirements already damaging his season. Poor starts. Power delivery issues. Overheating tires. Balance problems. And now, a Barcelona Grand Prix where Hamilton's Ferrari, Russell's Mercedes, and Norris's McLaren all finished ahead of Red Bull. That is not a small warning. That is the collapse of fear. Because Verstappen did not lose to one rival. He lost to 3 different teams in the same race, while Red Bull are still searching for the emergency fix that was supposed to bring their season back to life. And now the biggest question is no longer whether Red Bull can find a few tenths. It is whether Verstappen still believes they can build him a winning car before his patience runs out. Subscribe to the channel. Barcelona was supposed to calm Red Bull down. Instead, it made the crisis impossible to dress up. Before the race, there was still a version of the story that Red Bull could believe in. The season had been brutal, yes. Verstappen had already suffered retirements. The power delivery problems were real. The starts had been weak. The tires had been overheating. The balance had not given him the confidence he needed. But Barcelona was meant to be the check. The moment where Red Bull could look at the car, look at the data, look at Verstappen's pace, and say, the worst is behind us. That did not happen. The car finished, but the message was still damaging. And sometimes, that is worse than a retirement. Because if Verstappen had stopped again, Red Bull could have pointed to one failure. One broken system. One mechanical reason. One clear explanation that swallowed the entire result. But 4th place tells a colder story. 4th place says the car ran, and this was still the outcome. Hamilton won for Ferrari. Russell finished 2nd for Mercedes. Norris finished 3rd for McLaren. Verstappen finished behind all of them. That order matters. It means Red Bull were not only beaten by one team having a perfect day. They were beaten by the new shape of the front of Formula 1. Ferrari had enough to win. Mercedes had enough to stay ahead. McLaren had enough to reach the podium. Red Bull had enough to score, but not enough to scare anyone. That is the alarming part. Not a single lap. Not one sector. The overall picture. For years, Verstappen in a Red Bull changed how races felt. If he was close, the leader could not relax. If he was behind, strategy walls became nervous. If he was near the front, everyone expected him to appear at some point with pace that seemed impossible to answer. Barcelona did not feel like that. The leaders were not running from Verstappen. They were racing ahead of him. And that changes everything. Once rivals stop fearing Red Bull, they start racing differently. They defend with more confidence. They make strategy calls without assuming Verstappen will destroy them later. They stop treating Red Bull as the team that will inevitably arrive at the front. That is how dominance fades. Not in one dramatic moment. Slowly. First, the gap closes. Then rivals win. Then the wins stop looking surprising. Then a 4th place starts looking normal. And when a 4th place starts looking normal for Verstappen, Red Bull are in serious trouble. That is why the Barcelona result felt so heavy. It did not look like bad luck. It looked like a level. And Verstappen knows the difference. He knows when a result has been stolen by circumstances, and he knows when the car simply was not there. In Spain, the car was not there. It was present, but not threatening. Fast enough to be part of the race, but not fast enough to shape it. For a driver like Verstappen, that is almost worse than being nowhere. Because he can feel the missing pieces. He can feel when the car does not launch properly. He can feel when the electrical power is not arriving cleanly. He can feel when the tires are getting too hot. He can feel when the balance is asking him to wait instead of attack. And the source of Red Bull's problem is not one tiny weakness. It is a chain. The start problems matter because a bad launch puts Verstappen in traffic. Traffic makes the tires hotter. Hot tires reduce grip. Less grip makes the balance worse. A nervous balance means the driver cannot push. If the driver cannot push, the strategy becomes defensive. And once the strategy becomes defensive, the leaders escape. That is how a race slips away before it ever looks dramatic. That is what Red Bull have been fighting all season. The new hybrid era has changed the demands on the car. The electrical side of the power unit now matters more than ever. Energy deployment, battery cooling, recovery, and delivery are not background details anymore. They are central to whether the driver can race properly. In simple terms, the car has to decide when to store energy, when to release it, how to keep the system cool, and how to deliver power smoothly while everything is under extreme stress. If that does not work perfectly, the driver feels it everywhere. At the start. On corner exit. At the end of a straight. When defending. When attacking. When trying to make one decisive move that could change the race. That is why Verstappen's earlier complaints across the season matter. When he talks about power not being there, or deployment problems, or the car not feeling good, those are not small emotional outbursts. They are warning signs from the one person who can feel the machine before the data is fully explained. And Barcelona gave Red Bull more warning signs. The car did not give Verstappen the authority he needed. Not over one lap. Over the race. That is where the difference between qualifying hope and race reality becomes painful. A car can look promising with low fuel. It can produce a good moment when the tires are fresh. But a Grand Prix is much harsher. The fuel load changes. The tires age. The temperatures rise. The track evolves. Traffic appears. The power unit has to keep delivering again and again. A car that is not truly balanced will reveal itself over distance. Barcelona revealed Red Bull. The circuit is demanding. Long corners. High loads. Abrasive asphalt. Constant stress. It punishes cars that overheat their tires and rewards cars that can stay calm through a stint. Ferrari managed the race well enough to win. Mercedes had enough pace to finish second. McLaren had enough to reach the podium. Red Bull were left chasing answers. And that is why the discussion around the governing body and Red Bull's power unit classification matters in the background. This is not about a public race penalty from Barcelona. It is not about a steward decision that explains Verstappen's result. The issue is broader. Red Bull have been involved in formal discussions about power unit classification results, which tells you the technical fight around this new era is not simple. Teams are not just fighting on track. They are fighting over benchmarks, interpretations, and the direction of power unit performance. When your car is winning, those discussions feel like details. When your car is underperforming, they feel urgent. And Red Bull are underperforming. That is why every number now feels heavier. 43 points for Verstappen after 7 races is not the kind of total anyone expected from a driver of his level. 69 points for Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship is not the kind of position a recent powerhouse wants to explain. And being behind Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren at the same time creates a problem that no single excuse can solve. They are not chasing one team. They are chasing a pack. That makes the emergency fix much harder. If only Ferrari were ahead, Red Bull could target one style of performance. If only Mercedes were ahead, they could focus on one benchmark. If only McLaren were the surprise, they could treat it as a specific threat. But when all three are ahead in different ways, Red Bull have to fix everything. Starts, energy delivery, tire life, balance, race pace, reliability, confidence. That last one may be the most important. Confidence is not shown only in lap times. It is shown in how a driver attacks a corner. How early he gets back to power. How calmly he defends. How sharply he reacts when a rival appears. How willing he is to commit when the gap is small and the race is on the line. Verstappen's greatest strength has always been that he drives like the car will answer him. Right now, the car is not answering enough. And that is why the situation is becoming dangerous for Red Bull beyond the stopwatch. A team can fix parts. It is much harder to rebuild a driver's belief once it starts to thin. Before Barcelona, reports of an emergency meeting between Verstappen and senior Red Bull ownership figures had already created tension. Verstappen refused to give details, saying conversations inside the team happen all the time. That is exactly what a driver says when he wants the subject contained. But the results are not helping him contain it. Every weekend makes those reports feel more important. Every race where the car does not improve makes the questions louder. Every time Verstappen finishes behind multiple rivals, people start wondering what his patience is worth. And Red Bull know that. They know Verstappen is not just another driver on the payroll. He is the center of the team's entire competitive identity. He is the reason Red Bull are still treated as dangerous even when the car is not. He is the driver who can turn a small recovery into a winning threat faster than almost anyone else. But even Verstappen needs a platform. Barcelona showed that platform is not there yet. That is the real warning. Not that Verstappen suddenly forgot how to win. Not that Red Bull are incapable forever. But that the current car is still asking too much from its driver and giving too little back. A champion can drag a difficult car to fourth. He cannot turn a difficult car into a title campaign if the rivals keep improving. And the rivals are improving. Hamilton's Ferrari victory changed the emotional shape of the season. It proved Ferrari could execute under pressure. Russell's second place proved Mercedes still had front-running strength. Norris's podium proved McLaren were not just waiting for mistakes, they had pace to claim results. Red Bull's fourth place proved they are still searching. That is a painful contrast. One team celebrates a breakthrough. Another secures strong points. Another reaches the podium. Red Bull leave with a result that raises more questions than it answers. That is why the data feels alarming. Because it is not only about speed. It is about direction. Is Red Bull moving toward the front, or staying trapped just behind the teams that matter? Is the car becoming more predictable, or still forcing Verstappen to manage weakness after weakness? Is the power unit integration improving, or still limiting the whole package? Is the tire overheating under control, or still waiting to punish them on demanding circuits? Barcelona did not give the answer Red Bull needed. It gave the answer their rivals wanted. Red Bull are vulnerable. And once that belief spreads through the paddock, every race becomes harder. Ferrari will attack them with more confidence. Mercedes will not fear them in strategy. McLaren will believe podiums are available. And Verstappen will know that he is no longer starting weekends as the automatic threat. That is the mental shift Red Bull must stop immediately. Because if it continues, the season can get away from them quickly. Not through one disaster, but through accumulation. Fourth here. A reliability issue there. A poor start at the next race. Tires fading again. Another awkward interview. Another upgrade that does not fully solve the problem. That is how a champion starts asking bigger questions. Not because he wants drama. Because he wants a winning car. And Red Bull have to prove they can still build one. But the next layer of Red Bull's crisis is even more uncomfortable. Because Barcelona did not just show that the car was slow compared to Ferrari, Mercedes, and McLaren.